I'm just going to get started so we can stay on schedule. So welcome everybody to the last meeting of the VEOAC in 2024. Certainly we are in probably a very different situation than we expected we would be in, but here we are. So if you could introduce yourself in the chat rather than trying to go around, I have a hard time doing it when everyone's on Zoom. Unless you're brand new, if this is your first VEOC, it would be great if you could come off mute and introduce yourself and what organization you're with. Otherwise, if you could just put in the chat your name, what organization you're with, that would be fantastic. So today's meeting, basically, Jimmy Rosari from the elections office will be coming on in a little while to give an overview of the results from the general election. And then after that, Will Albin from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation will give an update about the grant process. And then finally, we'll have a little bit of a voter engagement debrief. So if you could start thinking about, for those of you who had, either had the grant or just did some voter outreach, what worked well this time? What would you do differently in the next election cycle? Are there any types of materials or supports you wish you had that would have made your job easier? So if you could just be thinking about that, and we'll cover that at the end of the meeting. So let's see, where's all the chat? Okay.
I can monitor the chat for you, Diane. Right. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Yahya Ortega. I'm here with Thrive Alliance, and we also have our executive director on the call. Georgia, would you like to introduce? Yep, there she is.
I just popped my name in the chat, Georgia Farouk. Nice to see everyone.
Diane, I'm seeing Will introduce himself from SVCF. Glenn is here from Immigration Institute of the Bay Area. We have Kefren from the elections office. We have Lucy. Hi, Lucy from Taluma for Tongans. We have Ben from CID and Joanne from Puente. And a lot more folks are coming in as we speak.
Yeah, so we got Jenny Dang from Second Harvest. Marnie Rubin from the League of Women Voters, South San Mateo County. Nicole, obviously, from Thrive. Thank you so much for being our Zoom coordinator today. So Nicole, we just need to make sure we give Jim, I guess we have to make him a co-host so he can share his screen when he comes on.
I can make him a co-host. Okay. I just need to know, is Jim on already, Kefren? And I don't see him.
He did say he would be here, so maybe just a few more minutes.
Okay. And I'll make Will co-host as well.
I can start too if you want, as we're waiting for Jim, if that works.
Yeah, that works. Diane, what do you think?
Sure. Let's go for it.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here. In a moment, I do have some slides that I'm going to share.
1 second.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. And I'm Will Aubin. I'm the Community Action Manager at Silicon Valley Community Foundation. I work closely with Jack Mahoney on the voter engagement work that we've done in the primary and in the general this past year. And we've partnered with the county since 2018 through all the primaries, general, including one recall that happened a couple of years ago, as you remember. And so we've had this partnership. We also partner with Hotch Jr. So there's 3 funders, the county, us, and Hotch Jr. I've been able to fund this work since 2018. And I'm going to pull up my slides. So this is really an overview of the work that a lot of the organizations that are on the call did this past cycle. So I'm going to pull this up. And I'm still kind of going through it. So if there's anything that kind of pops up during this presentation, it's very short. But just feel free to ask questions, or if there's anything that you feel like we should add in this, please make some notes so we can include that. So this is for the 2024 general. These are the 15 organizations that were funded through this cycle. The ones with the little starbursts are the ones that were funded through the county. So there's 12, there's maybe 11 organizations, I think. I have to go back and count them all. And then we had 2 organizations that were funded through Haas Junior, and then also organizations that we funded through SVCF. And then this is my attempt to try to put some of the work on the map of San Mateo County. And I just kind of did this. So if there's anything that looks wrong, please let me know. I know there's organizations on the call. But just to try to get some general focus areas, this work started to try to target low turnout precincts that historically have had low turnouts, to try to get out voter engagement material, to have a familiar face that's kind of doing this work. So it's not just somebody from the county necessarily. It's a local organization that has deep ties to these areas. And that's where this work started from. So as you can see, there's more than 15 numbers on here. Some organizations listed multiple kind of localities that they were working in, but you can see the spread. We have Daly City and South San Francisco to the north, San Mateo, which is more central. We have the coast side, which was Puente, I think is on the call, Joanne is. They did the work kind of in the South Coast area, which if you've ever been there, it's a pretty rural area. It's pretty disconnected from, Santa Cruz to the south and Half Moon Bay to the north. So they were doing really important voter engagement work with the communities that they serve on that side of the coast. And then you have a large number of organizations kind of in that Redwood City, North Fair Oaks area, which I know is more broad than just the Redwood City area, down through Bellhaven, East Menlo Park, and East Palo Alto. I also included the Maple Street Jail, which we had legal services for prisoners with children, who I think maybe on the call, but they were one of the grantees who did some outreach in that area as well. Any questions about kind of localities, things like that, or my dots are wrong? Cool. All right, and this was this round was a little bit different. So historically, we've only focused on low turnout precincts and organizations that are working with that. This round, the county wanted us to also have organizations focus on voters who are incarcerated, and also voters who are unhoused or experiencing housing insecurity. So again, this number adds up to more than 15. So we had some organizations who did multiple outreaches in this area. So we had 13 organizations targeting low precincts, 5 organizations targeting people who are incarcerated, and 3 organizations targeting people who are unhoused or experiencing housing insecurity. And we know, especially the housing insecurity, that's a tough demographic for people. A lot of times voting is related to your address. If you don't have a home, you don't have an address. And so this was a very important area to try to make sure that these people are still involved in the democratic process, that they know their rights, they know where they can vote, things like that. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add on this slide, or anybody from the county. Right. I know the county, and I'll say one thing that maybe Jim isn't on the call yet, but San Mateo County is really trying to be on the forefront in incarcerated populations and trying to get them really advocacy so they can vote. And we have some organizations that we funded this round that are doing direct advocacy to try to make sure that people who can still vote, who are incarcerated, are able to and to do that freely. One of the things that's been proposed is to get precincts actually in the local jails. So it's very easy and making it easier to get voter information and voter access to people who are incarcerated.
Will, if
Yeah,
I
go
may,
ahead, Yara. Yeah.
thank you for including this information, and that's something that has been brought up to this committee. So we agree on that perspective to have vote centers in the counties, jails. What my question is, I may have missed, but what were the 5 organizations that worked on with the incarcerated folks, and the 3 that were working with the unhoused folks?
Yeah, I have to go back and look at the data, but I can name some off the top. Obviously, legal services for people and prisoners with children, which is this organization right here. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look at the notes.
I mean, Legal Women Voters South San Mateo County also went into went into Maple Street.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you,
Trail.
Diane. Thank you. And yeah, the League of Women Voters did a lot of just kind of great partnership work with organizations also in South County too. Yeah, I can go back and give you that data. Once I'm done sharing, I can post it in the chat. Yeah.
That's very helpful. This
Yeah.
group has been particularly interested in those two sections as well. So I'm glad that you're highlighting it, and I'm grateful for the county to investing in this population.
Yeah, thank you. And then this is the last slide. So these are the types of engagement that took place during the general election. You have some kind of more high touch, which is door knocking, phone text banking. And this is different than, those texts that you get from campaigns that we probably all ignore after a certain point. These are people and organizations that you know. It's not just some random number that's kind of texting you from a campaign. These are people doing direct outreach. And I don't think Vinny's on the call, but Filipino Baño Community Center, I believe. They do a lot of work in the Daly City area and do a lot of text banking there, which is this organization right here. And then you have tabling events, a little bit more lower touch is social media and email. Again, those are kind of things that you may look at, but they're not necessarily a person or somebody texting you directly. And in total, we had around 64,000, nearly 65,000 levels of touch points around voter information and engagement this past election cycle. So that's all that I have, and I can get those organizations for everyone. And I'll leave it for any questions or any comments or anything.
So any questions for Will?
And Kate, I don't know, we might have some of those organizations on the call. And Diane, maybe you can speak to that question that Kate put in around it, if
Okay.
there was anybody that was going to Juvenile Hall Youth Services Center.
I don't think anyone did that I'm aware of, Kate. Okay. So
Yes, Maura. Yeah.
Yes, we can share the slides, Maura. I don't see Eric Sapp, who would know if they work with some young folks as well. He had a couple of announcements. He might be joining a
he'll be
little
joining
bit.
the, yes, we'll just make sure we ask him.
She said, Kate Heister said, for what it's worth, I know that Fresh Lifelines for Youth did young voter lesson on each of the units. Thank you, Kate.
Great. Well,
Will,
thank you, Diane. And thank you, Yahira. Yeah.
thank you for presenting.
Right.
I have one last question. Do you,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you debrief with at least some of the organizations or you will be doing that in the next couple of weeks, but what have you found is more helpful in terms of getting people's attention?
That's a great question. We will debrief with them over the next couple of weeks. I think we have most of those already scheduled. And if you're on the call and you haven't scheduled, there's a handful. I'll reach back out just to make sure we get you on that. Historically, what we've seen is really those face-to-face interactions. They go a long way, and they're high touch. It's really quality over quantity. We all get so inundated with texts, emails, social media posts about the election. But if somebody that you know or that lives in your neighborhood is talking to you about voting, there's a great piece that Youth Community Services did in partnership with a couple other organizations that really shows the beauty of, going door to door, being in community and just talking about the importance of voting, that you should all check out. And more, if you have the link, I'm sure you probably shared it in this group before, if you want to drop it in the chat.
Yes,
that would
Maura,
be good to
please
put
drop it in the
Yeah.
chat.
Yeah.
And Will, is there anything that has surprised you from this election that has been different from other elections as you were collecting data?
Yeah, we did notice there were fewer touch points, and I don't know if, it's again, quality over quantity. There was fewer touch points in the general than there was in the primary.
Huh.
And I think that is a good thing because, primary, that's good to get people engaged. Primary is sometimes tough to get people involved and to think about.
Yeah.
And hopefully that continues over into the general. But I think some of that is burnout. I mean, it's been a long election cycle. It's hard to just be going out there. The national political context is so polarized, and so people are very tired of kind of the conversation that goes around that. So I think some of that is related to it.
Thank you. Thank you for all those updates, and we'll be having a conversation a little bit later about how people felt it went in general. So we'll hear some voices in the room. After Jim's updates, we'll have that conversation. So feel free to stay by if you'd like, and we'd love to send out the slides. So just I'll be following up with you for those
Sounds
slides.
good. And I'll get those organizations in the chat real quick.
Thank you. Thank you, Will.
Great. So Jim, so Jim Irizarry from the elections office is going to talk about how this past election cycle went. So I turn it over to you, Jim. Thanks so much for doing this yet again for us.
We can't hear you, Jim.
No.
In the meantime, Maura put the CBS report and the weekly article from Palo Alto in the chat if anyone's interested in seeing the kind of work that YCS did in East Palo Alto. Jim, I believe you're saying 1 second. Yes, okay. And thank you for being here, Jim. We switched the agenda around just a little bit this morning, but we're happy you're here.
Okay.
Can you hear me through my phone? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Jim. But
There's a bit of echo.
there's an echo because there might be a sound on your computer, or turn down the sound on your phone. One of those has to be turned down.
Am I in or out of the phone?
You're good.
Okay.
Normal.
We can't hear you, Jim, but I see you talking.
Did he mute his phone?
I wonder what's the setup is different this time, because he's never had this issue before. Usually been able to get on pretty easily.
He might be rejoining soon.
Okay. Well, while Jim is doing that, I just wanted to update folks really quickly. I recently learned that Assemblymember Mark Berman has proposed legislation to help speed up the counting of the ballots. So it's AB 5. He introduced it in the Assembly just the other day, December 2nd. Right now, it's pretty much just a placeholder, and he is looking to. He wants to basically go around and talk to the various county election officials in California to find out what resources or money they could use to help speed up the counting of the ballots. So that's something that we'll hopefully hear more about as things progress. So look for AB 5 from Mark Berman. You on yet, Jim?
In the meantime, I'm going to put the link to AB5, Diane, in the chat. Do we know if Eric logged on already? He has two
Okay.
announcements.
Let's see. I don't.
Eric here on the telephone.
Okay, so Eric, Diane, so if you could go ahead with your announcements while Jim's trying to work out the technical problems, that would be great.
Sure. So on the 19th of this month, that's 2 weeks from
So Eric,
Thursday. I'm gonna. Can you hear me?
Can you introduce yourself, because not everybody knows who you are.
Sure. Hi,
Can't see you.
Eric Sapp. Hi, my name is Eric Sapp. I'm a staff attorney at Legal Services for Prisoners with Children, and I'm on the 19th, which is 2 weeks from this Thursday at 2 p.m. I'm going to be doing a live webinar about the disenfranchisement of persons with criminal convictions, focusing on the Supreme Court case Richardson versus Ramirez, which was decided 50 years ago, and basically ruled that equal protection under the 14th Amendment doesn't apply to persons disenfranchised by states. It actually came out of California in a interesting procedural posture. So anyway, I'm going to be talking about that along with my colleague Alyssa Moore, who's also on an elections board in I believe Alameda County, and so that's on the 19th, 2 p.m. I can when I figure out how to send something to the list, I can distribute the actual link for that, or Yahaira, if she's able to do so, could also. And
Eric,
and then there's a record.
Eric, I added the stuff to the link. The two links that you sent to me, I've already added them to the chat, and I will include them as well in the follow-up.
Fantastic. And then the other thing is a recording of a talk that I did before the election about jail voting. I think it's still of historical interest, and the law hasn't changed since then, so it should still be of interest to people. And there's a Spanish version of that as well, courtesy of the group that does translations for nonprofits. The name escapes me at the moment, but I'll be sure to credit them properly when the time arises. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Eric. And that group is Thrive Alliance. We do have the translation hub for anybody that wants to use it. Sure. On this call. Eric, as you heard, was able to use that for a recording that he did in English, and we did it in Spanish.
So Jim, are you all set?
I think so. Do you hear me now?
Yes, we do.
Great. The wonders of technology. We have just the finest technology here that doesn't work when you need it. Works when you don't sometimes. But anyway, thank you for your patience, and good morning, everyone. Good to see everybody here, and great job on this election cycle. And great job, Will. I mean, the program that we have had with Silicon Valley Foundation and of course, the Voter Education and Outreach Committee has been a model that others have followed in the state. We get calls all the time regarding the program, its success, how it was structured, and it's a classic example of a public-private partnership, which are essential these days to provide services and to do them efficiently, and to also have an impact, because this program has had an impact. So congratulations to all of you. Congratulations to Will and the program on a really successful effort this year. This has been a remarkable election, and I do have some slides to share with you. And so let me see if I can get those up. Do you have them, or am I going to share them on the screen here?
I do not have them at the moment, but if you want to share them, it should allow you to share them.
Okay, just one second.
You're on mute again, Jim. I'm not sure if that was intentional.
It was intentional. We just did a presentation to the board yesterday that had the statistics for the 2 elections, and I want to bring those up if I can and share the screen. So just one second. Okay. I'd like to look at the statistics one of both the March and
We can see your slides now, Jim.
Okay, great. Let me move them to the correct area, and we'll be good. Okay, so let's first of all, this is not the slide I wanted to start with, but we will start with that. We have a slide on all of the statistics of the election, and I kind of wanted to go through that. But one of the areas that was impressive is that, first of all, the November 5th, 2024 presidential election had the largest voter turnout in the history of San Mateo County. Not turnout, excuse me, largest voter registration. The largest voter turnout was in 1960, and we'll talk a little bit about the 2020 election, which had a pretty sizable turnout also compared to this one. I know that was a question that you had asked to compare. But the November 5th, 2024 presidential general election, in terms of voter registration, had, almost, 43,000 or so. Let me see if I can get to that slide. Just one moment. Come on, just keep on going. Don't even worry about it. Just one second. Okay, this is the slide that I wanted to show you in terms of the statistics. Is that being shared at this point in time? Let me see.
Yes, we see you scrolling through slides.
Okay, there you go. Okay. Just one moment if I can eliminate the picture. Okay. So hopefully you can hear me here. And this is just an overview of the election, the statistics that we have. As I said, this election had the largest number of registered voters in the history of San Mateo County. We didn't know if we were going to break that record, which was set. Well, we had it in the March election, was one of the highest also. So both the March and the November elections both clipped at historic paces with respect to the number of registered voters. So this is the most registered voters we've had participating in an election. Credit goes, of course, to our voter education outreach committee and all of the efforts that that we put forth for registering voters, this is a very impressive statistic in terms of the effect of our programs to get people to the ballot box. I'll show you the graphs in terms of our percentages on the next slide. But right now, let's just kind of go through what we had on the ballot. This was a large election. We had 177 candidates on the ballot. We had 176 ballot styles. And that means, when you multiply it by the 4 languages that we have, English, Spanish, Chinese, and Filipino, we had 704 different ballot styles. That speaks to the complexity of the election, and it also speaks to the sophistication of our professional staff in elections to be able to construct the ballot of this size, of this nature, and to get it all accurate and sent out within the time periods required under the election code. That is a major challenge. That's a behind the scenes type of situation. We invite people to come and also see, in terms of our observer program, to see the process in the background. It is extremely impressive. But putting a ballot style together, that means you have to make sure you have the right jurisdiction, the right jurisdictions within that, for example, school districts, water districts, special districts, and every address has its own unique ballot style. And then you have to meld that with the voter registration file to make sure that that ballot style and that ballot gets to the right person. And you've got 443,000 registered voters that have to receive the right ballot style. It is an incredible logistical accomplishment to do that. Nobody really notices that unless you're in the background. But I'm saying, and I'm taking a little bit of time here to give credit to our election staff for being able to structure and to construct such a complex ballot and to get it out timely and to get it out to all of the registered voters. Part of the complexity of the ballot, of course, is that we had 34 local jurisdictions on the ballot. We had 10 state and federal contests, 62 contests and local offices. Again, the 10 contests for the state and federal offices run with the number of jurisdictions that we had. We had 28 local measures, a lot of measures on there, and 10 state propositions. All in all, this was a very, very large election. Today, December 4th, we are now in the process of certifying the election. Tomorrow is the 30-day, end of the 30-day certification process. Yesterday was the last day, December 3rd, that ballots could be cured by voters who didn't sign their ballot with a signature mismatch, or we didn't have any identification. So, we sent out letters to those folks to cure those ballots, and we did have fairly substantial portion of those that were cured and included in this election. We had we have a couple of close contests, and we'll see at the end of the certification process where that actually lands. And if there's no automatic recount process in California. It has to be called by a voter or candidate, and you can then go ahead and do a recount, but that then becomes costly for the person who actually wants the recount. We provide a special service in San Mateo County that we've been able to do with our digital system. We have every ballot in California must be paper. So we have a paper ballot system. So every ballot that's cast, whether it's at a vote center or if it's from home, is on paper. In a vote center, you have a ballot marking device, ballot marking tablet, and then it prints a piece of paper. That paper then gets scanned. That ballot then gets scanned. So then we have a digital copy of every ballot that has been cast in the election. That really assists us with this new technology in close races. For example, if a candidate or candidates or proponents of measures want to actually count the ballots themselves for that particular race, they can come to our office. They have to request it, of course, and we will set up a terminal or terminals for them to actually look at every digital ballot that was cast in that race, and they can then make their own, come to their own conclusions and assessments as to the accuracy of our final report. That has gone a long way to reducing the number of count requests because people can actually see with their own eyes what we're seeing and verify the actual count process. We anticipate that there will be some requesting of that service in these close contests. So that's again a really excellent opportunity for people to come to elections and actually see how and what we do, and to verify, our numbers. Tomorrow we will be again certifying the vote and issuing what's called a statement of the vote, which will go to the Secretary of State, and that will be the final percentages that will be reported. Back to the bar graph, if I can, for a second. And we're going to scroll up and down because this was again, excuse me for not, dissecting, the election ballots or the election slides specifically out of our budget slides. But this was a comparison of our voter turnout to statewide averages. I think this too is an impressive statistic. When you take a look at San Mateo County's turnout, both in the March and the November election, you'll see that we are outpacing the statewide averages. Again, credit to our outreach programs and all of the efforts that we put forth to engage and include everyone in the electoral process. But you can see that we were a good 5 points above in both the March and the November presidential general election as compared to statewide averages. Those are unofficial. Tomorrow they will be official with respect to the November general election. But again, good work to everybody to get to that point. I think it's really impressive to have that type of turnout comparatively speaking to the state. We talked a little bit about outreach to incarcerated persons. That was also successful. I know that we did not get 60, not 66, but 544, yes, AB 544 signed by the governor. But as we've mentioned before, many of the services that are provided in San Mateo County in terms of the connections that we have with the Sheriff's Department, they have a coordinator. We have regular contacts with them. We provide them all of the ballot materials and information and ballots, and we deliver ballots in both ways. We have a very strong program. We've traditionally done that for the last 20 years. And in many respects, 544 wanted to emulate what we're doing here in San Mateo County. The only distinction was that 544 established a vote center in the jails, and we don't have that capacity right now. But every other program, for the most part, that 544 proposed, we are doing voluntarily in San Mateo County. And that too speaks to the success of voter outreach to all populations, including those in jails. So that's a general overview. Let me see. I think there was a question that was asked on comparison to the 2020 presidential election. Voter turnout in the 2020 presidential general election was 85.89%. Let me see, we had November 5th, 2024, of course, was 76.10. So you can see that the turnout, which was the fourth highest in the county's history for November 2020, was larger than the turnout for this particular election. And again, elections are driven a lot by the candidates, the issues, and the 2020 election was a large one. So anyway, open it up to any questions that people might.
Well, Marnie had a question about, do you have the number of eligible voters in San Mateo County? So that will give us an idea of how many more folks we need to be targeting to get.
We do. I don't have them committed to memory, but it's in the neighborhood of around 510,000 eligible voters in San Mateo County in that range. I can get that specific number, but I don't have it with me right now. Let me see if I can pull it up.
Anybody have questions for Jim?
I was curious about, I know that there was some efforts to track the incarcerated voter participation, and I'm just curious, is there any data on that around, was there any increase in participation or registration or things like that?
We are accumulating that data. I mean, we're going to be, again, we're in the process of certifying the vote. Once we have that, yes, we have those numbers. Can't report them to you right now, but yes, we do have those in terms of
Awesome.
outreach efforts to the jail. Yes, we're going to be able to report on.
The other report that we've gotten in the past that I think it would be helpful, especially for the organizations that got grants, was the low voter turnout precincts, to see if there was any additional positive impact of doing the outreach, and whether we've been able to get those numbers up in terms of turnout in those precincts.
We will do that analysis with the final report, which will be issued tomorrow to the Secretary of State. At that point in time, we'll know the percentages, we'll know the voter turnout by precinct, finalized, that's confirmed, and we will be able to determine those counties. And we work with the Silicon Valley Foundation on identifying those for our outreach program. So we will be doing that also.
Hi, Jim. My name is Mark Dynan. I'm in East Palo Alto. Is there a way to get precinct level, and where would we get the precinct level breakdown of who voted?
Statement of the vote. Statement of the vote, which will be certified tomorrow. After we certify the election, we will issue the statement of the vote. Statement of the vote does go online. It will also go to the Board of Supervisors. So that will be available, and you will see basically the returns by precinct in the statement of the vote, by jurisdiction and by precinct.
Okay, and that'll break it down who was voted for, like from all positions, or is it like for all?
It's a very comprehensive report, so it will be broken down by jurisdiction and precincts. And I need to see if it's going to be by contest, but I believe that we will be able to see those numbers, definitely by precincts in terms of total turnout, but by contest, I would need to look at that.
Okay, yeah, I'm really curious. I ran for city council. I know where I knocked and where I didn't knock, and I'd be curious if knocking helped or hurt me. But you know, or whether it was just like a wash, you know. But when you run for office, and I ran for EPA city council, you get granular to a point of absurdity, and you know, it just would be really interesting to see what worked and what didn't work, and if it had any impact at all. So I'll look for the report.
I would say the first place to start, as I mentioned, is the statement of the vote. It's an incredible amount of information. It's pretty thick. Makes great bedtime reading, so I'm sure you'll love it. And I understand the granular nature of campaigns, because we get those requests all the time during the campaign, and really it's a combination of everything. It's a ground game. It's you know, the digital exposure that one has to, and I'm sure that it's a learning process for anybody that goes through that. And congratulations on your efforts also. That's pretty remarkable. Anybody that runs for office and in service to the community we should be very grateful for that type of effort. It's a great role model, because people who get involved are the ones who make change and influence their community. So thank you very much for your efforts.
Yeah, I knocked on thousands of doors, so, and I know where I knocked and where I didn't knock, and that's really my, you know, it's like A/B testing. It didn't matter at all. I mean, maybe it went down. Maybe people met me and said, "I'm not voting for that guy," and the other people were just swayed by my Instagram ads. But I mean, I did win the election, so or I came in second, and the top three went in. But yeah, when you run a campaign and you talk to people and you do all these different things, it's always uncertain what works and doesn't work. And the vote is really the final, you know, it's final test, you know, like getting on the scale if you're on a diet, see if you've lost weight or not. And it's just a whole lot of, there's a whole lot of things you do as a candidate that makes a lot of noise but may have very little impact. And then there's stuff you do that makes a huge impact but doesn't make a lot of noise. So it's very curious to me, like what actually worked and what didn't work. And I guess looking at the precinct level data might be a starting point for analyzing it. So thank you.
You're welcome, and definitely the statement of the vote. You have to check that out.
All right.
And if you have any questions, during that process, by all means, please feel free to let us know.
Okay, so no further questions for Jim? Okay, well, thank you so much, Jim, for that information. That was really helpful.
Our pleasure, and thank you again, and my apologies for the technical issues we had this morning. But you all have a great day, and if I don't see you, have just an absolutely wonderful holiday season. And it's just been great working with all of you, and look forward to next year, starting all over again for 2026.
Okay, all right. Bye, Jim. So the last item on the agenda for today is to do a debrief on all the different voter engagement activities that the various groups on this call have done. So what would be wonderful if different organizations can talk about what worked, what didn't work. And again, just looking forward to the future is like, what additional resources would have been helpful to make you more productive in doing your voter outreach? So I'm just going to kind of open it up to whoever would like to start. And if no one offers to start, I will pick on you. So hopefully someone out there will kick us off.
Yeah,
How about you, Maura? Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead for which one? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead. So just remind everyone what organization you're with.
For sure. My name is Glenn Olson, and I am a program manager with the Immigration Institute of the Bay Area, IIBA. So what we really focused on was reaching out to former clients and students. IIBA has been providing legal help and educational help for immigrants in the Bay Area for a long time. So we had a pretty big pool of people to reach out to. It went really well. We were able to reach out to, it's 1,500 something. I'm blanking on the exact, but over 1,500 people, former clients and students, with great help with people like Maura's organization was awesome for helping us as a partner, and also volunteers we have through Stanford's Haas Center, and Sequoia High School, some members of the Dream Club there. Most of the people we were reaching out to were Spanish speaking, so having a lot of Spanish speaking volunteers was key. Something in the future, having volunteers that speak, make sure that be more targeted about recruiting volunteers with a ton of different language experiences, I think would help us get a little bit more. But by far the most common, most of our clients and students live in areas like East Palo Alto and North Fair Oaks. We also did events. Jim came to one of our events and did a presentation. We were told we needed Spanish support, and then Jim did the presentation in Spanish, which was awesome for the county. But that was great that people had, former clients and students had questions about the ballot and how to vote. We also did an online events about the propositions in Spanish, nonpartisan information. So it went really well. I think more targeted thing about languages for us in the future, and you guys, Thrive and others provided, and League of Women Voters provided a lot of great resources on that. That's just more matching. And I think having more events, we have established locations that work really well for us, like North Fair Oaks, the Fair Oaks Community Center, but figuring out other places to hold events to community members that might be more convenient for people that don't live in those areas. Like especially many of our clients and students, some of them at least, live in North County, and I think we could be better at reaching North County, for example, on our end. Anyway, I don't know if that's too long or too short, but I'm passing on.
Glenn, that was perfect, and I hear you on the event side of things, North County, but actually, Thrive is compiling a list of just sites in general that are open. I just recently heard from, I think it's Peninsula Book Collaborative, they're a space, and they're going to start opening up their space up in the North County. If you're looking for an event space,
That's awesome.
they're going to start opening up their their event space. So if there's any connection or anything that you need, let me know, or anyone else on this call, because I do know that's been one of the worries. The other tip is to connect with maybe Healthways, Dr. Vinny Acevedo, or even PBRC, who does the work up North County, or Rice South City. They might have some locations in mind already.
Thank you. That's great.
So who would like to go next? How about the folks from Bellhaven? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Maura.
Oh,
I was wondering, like, how long?
I hope
Wait.
no, Pam, please go first. We'll go after.
Pam, are you ready to go?
Hang on, don't know quite how to use this. Hello, everybody. We're very inventive down here in Bellhaven, being that we ended up here at CCI. So we come to you from our meeting room. And I was trying to thank you, Maura, for all of the support that you gave us. That's what I was doing here. We did a couple of different things with the vote center. Location is the key. It has to be someplace that's visible, because even with handing out flyers, it didn't bring in a lot of people. But if you have the facility someplace where people can see it, we have a Jack in the Box, 2 vacant buildings up there, and they weren't willing to rent to us for 3 months. It was too short for them. The door-to-door is very successful. Of course, we have a small compact community. So what we did is door-to-door with everybody, flyer. And then the second round was with, what information was it?
Where you can go.
Where to vote, at the vote center, the local one, and got to a portion of the neighborhood with that. And those that we didn't get to, we then followed up with phone calls and text messaging. That process, as well as the door-to-door, showed us that we have a lot of vacant houses. There's a lot of transit in the neighborhood. So our next step, even though we're not funded for it yet, is to find out who really is living in the community that is currently registered. And do you ladies have anything else to ask?
I do want to add that when we were wanting to do canvassing, like door knocking, we were between door knocking all the houses that had registered voters and getting them out to vote, or going door to door and just finding out where people were at, whether they had registered, if they were new to the community, any other questions they had. And so we did a test run with Nuestra Casa, and we determined that we just did one small street and door knocked there, and figured that there was quite a few people that hadn't registered, and they could go and register at that local vote center when it opened on Saturday before elections. And so we determined that it was better use of our time to go door to door and reach as many people as possible to help them get registered and vote.
Yeah, and the team also carried devices so they could register on the spot, if that is what the residents, preferred.
That's actually a great piece of information in terms of anybody going out and doing door knocking.
And we do have an election coming up in March, I believe. Hillary, thanks, Hillary, and thanks, Jeffrey. You all were really, really helpful to us.
Our pleasure.
So Maura, you can go ahead.
Sure. Thank you so much. My name is Maura Uman. I'm with YCS Youth Community Service, and we serve both Santa Clara and San Mateo County. And this being part of this was just an amazing experience for so many of us at multiple levels. And I just feel like I'm going to get emotional. But I just want to thank all of the partners, because YCS's mission is to elevate youth voice to raise community connection and equity through service. And I feel like this epitomized that in so many ways. Many of our students, we had students from about 10 different schools in the area participate. And they partnered with adults because you can't really have youth going and knocking on doors by themselves. And the community members that came out to help them, the promotoras and others, were just, I think it just gave everybody so much hope to be together and do this work together. We probably knocked on, and then the partnerships with Pam and the partnership with Glenn and the fact that Thrive just had all this material. So we hit the ground running so fast, especially because of the League of Women Voters. I mean, I would call Betsy up at any time and she would answer the phone. So we're not experts in what we do, but we show up and everybody provided that support. So I think the students are like it was so much by the end of it, they were obviously through the whole process, they were coming up with ideas. They came up with this idea to have something called Nightmare on Vote Street, which was a way to bring all the candidates together and have a candidate forum, but also have youth facing organizations have a trunk or treat where they came and did an amazing job of engaging the youth. So trying to demystify the process and make it fun and engaging. And it was great to have all of the city council members, almost all, come and be at that forum. And the youth they came up with the questions, they asked the questions. They almost planned too much, which we did. We had an amazing event activity that we didn't have time for, where the candidates would have had to work together as a team and answer questions like, does pineapple belong on pizza? And the youth were one team and the candidates needed to be one team, and to see how they work together. I wanted to really shout out also to the staff at the voting office. We would drop off registration forms filled at various places. The phone calls that we made to Glenn's team was amazing because these were all first-time citizens who were so happy to hear from a young person. Some of our students aren't old enough to vote as yet, and for them to call and say, like, you are making a difference here by voting. So I think if anything, some of our students, many of them were first-time voters because of their age, and they were at school the whole day. So the only time they could actually vote was at the end of the day. They came and stood in line at the pop-up center, and they were in line till 9:30 at night. So they waited an hour and a half to vote. I heard that some of these centers didn't close till 11 p.m. that night. There were only 10 machines in East Palo Alto, at least that's what I've been told. I haven't done the research on it, but I think people, we have to recognize that some people really want to vote the day of and come and vote in person because they've had experiences where that has not been a possibility, or they feel like their vote won't count. And so it's important for them. And that's how it is, I think, in East Palo Alto, and we have to recognize that. But for people to have to wait in line for hours was really hard, I thought. And so if there's any way to beef up the number of voting stations, given that that's the way that turnout happens, that people come at the last minute and they stand in line, everyone stayed. And I would love for us to have a time for the students to come and share what their learnings were and how they can continue. So it was, sorry, I don't want to go on, but I just wanted two more things. It was all of us had to learn as we went. And I feel like there's been so much knowledge that has been amassed by the students. I'm hoping they will run for office one day as well from this. So the ripple effect of what this offered is really heartening. So I hope we can continue to engage these students, learn from them, from what their experience was, listen to like their suggestions and their thoughts. And I hope we can create spaces for that. So, but they couldn't have done it without so many of the organizations that are on this call right now, because you all gave them the tools that they needed to do the work effectively. The trainings we did, it was yeah, we probably put in over 2,000 hours. I have to look at my notes. Will probably has this more than I do, but I think collectively, yeah, we invested about 2,000 hours um, in English, Spanish, and Tongan through youth-led strategies. And yeah, by the end of it, like the youth wanted to stand at some of these intersections with signs that they had handmade in different languages. And then they estimated how many people who probably saw those. And they did all this math and they came up with the number 10,000. Given they counted how long the red light is on, and they were standing at the corner of Bay and University, which is kind of the center of town. So anyway, I'll stop there, but I hope we can give space for the youth to be able to talk about the work that they did. Thanks.
Beautiful, beautiful remarks. Maura, thank you for sharing all that. And yes, we would love the youth to come by at our next meeting and just tell us their experience during, that this is going to take we're going to take a while to debrief this election. We have a couple of next steps and we want to make sure that people are feeling like they're still being civically engaged. And as a VEOAC, that is our duty for all of us on this call to make sure that they're still being engaged. And congratulations on the amount of work you put together, Maura. We can see the effects of that work, and your voice and your remarks just exemplify the excitement that there was from the youth. So I'd love to hear it from their voices as well. And thank you for all the work that you did down there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Zahara. We couldn't have done it without you. Thanks.
Yeah, and would love to get your, input in terms of how best can we get the youth to give their feedback to us? Because obviously we usually have our meetings during the day when they're in school. So any ideas as to how we can make sure that we can get them involved and have them feel like they're part of the group, because they did so much work and we'd love to acknowledge that. That would, so any ideas you have for how we can make sure they can participate, we really are open to that. Thank you so much. So anyone else want to pop in and give us a quick rundown on what the organization?
That kind of ties into the work that you did with Kate. I wonder if Kate has any updates in terms of the groups that she was convening and the presentations that she did with the youth in terms of voting.
Sure. Sorry, I'm off camera. My computer's been fighting me this morning, but so I'm Kate Heister. I'm with Public Health on the Health Equity Policy and Planning team. Yeah, there was sort of a rather ad hoc group of folks that came together around creating a lesson around youth voting and trying to encourage young people to understand what voting's about, to feel that they wanted to vote, and to understand the resources that were available and how to go about doing it. So sort of like good news, bad news. I don't have data on who used it very much because we just put it out, made it very broadly available. So I had no way of sort of tracking who accessed. It was just through Google. It was just a Google Slides presentation and then a Google Doc in support of it. So I don't have a lot of data. What I can say is I know anecdotally it was used in all of the units in juvenile hall because there were a number of youth that were actually old enough to vote, but also obviously to pre-register. And then at the Redwood City Library and Coast Side, actually with a middle school class out on Coast Side. So I got some kind of anecdotal emails of saying, hey, this was great, thank you so much, but not necessarily. And then I also know that a few organizations that work with young people actually just emailed it out to the young people to kind of go through on their own to review. So it was definitely used, and I super appreciate all the folks that were involved that were on this call. So thank you. You know who you are. And then I think the other piece of this, and actually I was thinking about this more, part of my role going forward is to kind of build up youth advocacy broadly, certainly youth civic engagement as a piece of that across San Mateo County and kind of share best practices. So if there are folks who are interested in being part of that cohort and looking at how do we get young people, how do we as adult allies create great spaces and opportunities for young people to speak truth to power. I will put my email in the chat, and part of my project starting in January is to really continue that work and create a coalition of us adults trying to do better. Thanks so much for that. But happy to answer questions, but unfortunately don't have really solid data to share.
Okay, thank you for the update. Sorry, Diane, if I may, just we would have to connect because Maura and some other folks on this group are part of a Thrives Policy Affinity Group, and there's a work group already on policy on youth advocacy specifically, and it speaks to that kind of work that you're leading in 2025. So there's already a group of folks invested in this, and we'd love to connect you all together.
Yeah, all I was going to say is that the curriculum that Kate was talking about, it's very modular, so the majority of it can be used in future election cycles. So the only thing that really needs to be updated is if there's new propositions on the ballot. But it's really a great curriculum. It's really oriented towards the youth, and we've gotten a lot of good feedback on it. Okay. So Marnie, if you can talk about legal women voters, because I don't see Betsy or Bill on the call.
Okay, sure, no problem. Hi, everybody. My name is Marnie Rubin, and I'm part of the League of Women Voters of South San Mateo County. We have done a lot of work. I was on hiatus for part of this, so I'm just going to take over just from what I know from the work that Betsy, Colby, Bill Newell, and Jeff Ryder have done for this, continuing from the primary into the general. Because it was kind of a multi-pronged approach, we really focused in general on the 3 regions through Silicon Valley Community Foundation that are underrepresented, that we've wanted to focus on since basically 2020. That being East Palo Alto, the Belhaven region, and North Fair Oaks in Redwood City. So we kind of focused there. And in addition to that focus, we focused on youth. So that's high school outreach and community college outreach. There was a huge effort to get into the jail and to work with incarcerated folks to get them registered and voting. And then our general, both Spanish speaking and other underrepresented groups in those 3 areas. So that was a big focus. This year, I believe we focused less on kind of like mailings and that sort of thing and tried to get more in person, either in person via phone banking or in contact, in personal contact is what I mean. Not sure that there was a big canvassing effort this year, but there was a phone bank. And then Betsy and a couple other folks did go into the jail to, I think she has talked about that in the last meeting. She talked about that, but we also went into Sequoia High School and presented, this was Bill Newell's extension of what we did in the primary. We talked to all the seniors, so over 400 senior students, ostensibly of 17 to 18-year-old, and being able to vote soon. And we presented to all of them on the importance of voting, a little bit about the league, and also just, how to vote. But the importance of voting was important for us to try to get that idea across. And then the basics of registering, where to vote, how to vote, that sort of thing. So that was Bill presented to all of the seniors in conjunction with the teachers at Sequoia, and the principal, very, very supportive. It's always been our hope to kind of build that out to the entire Sequoia High School district. But we just, we run into a volunteer issue. So I'm sure a lot of you have that as well. So just trying to recruit volunteers, in particular, Spanish speaking volunteers for a lot of our efforts is always a challenge. So that's kind of part of our effort. So, but again, I think we did 1 mailing perhaps to every address in our precincts, our targeted or our, desired precincts. And so I believe there was a postcard with just general voting, where you can vote kind of thing. And that's, that's part of our efforts. Oh, one other thing is that Jeff Ryder is one of our voter services longtime members. he is doing a data comparison of what we've accomplished over, starting in the primary versus the general and the number of people voting and that sort of thing, kind of trying to track our impact. So he's been great at that and kind of working on a tool for that, I believe. So if anyone's interested in that kind of thing, we're happy to share. That's pretty much it. Personally, I just wanted to say I worked at the East Palo Alto Vote Center for 11 days. And wow, I mean, I have lots of stories I won't share, but not stories, but just, impressions of that vote center. And no doubt, Maura, we worked from 7 a.m. in the morning until we did not leave until 11:30 that night. People were in line for hours and we were happy to help them, happy to see that impact, happy to see that involvement. But yeah, it was incredible. And, the staff at the elections office is just, they're amazing. So I always want to give a shout out to the staff. They're super helpful. And it was a beast, let me say. But I'm glad that we got to help that community, cast their ballots, express their voice. And yeah, so, and getting students and incarcerated folks and all that, voting or registered, we're just happy to help. Looking forward to the March election already again. A lot to be done for that as well. So thanks.
Thanks, Marnie. Is there anybody else who wants to share their outreach activities?
I'm happy to talk about my experience as a candidate in East Palo Alto, running a campaign and what worked, what didn't work, if you would like to hear.
Just so long as it's partisan.
Well, not partisan. I mean, I think one of the issues, like I knocked on probably, I was out for about 8 weeks every weekend. I probably knocked on about 1,500 doors. And my general impression, like not partisan or anything, is that people are deeply uninformed about local issues. Like it's not that they have a different opinion of you, whatever, whether it's housing or parking or whatever. It's that they're not even aware it's an issue and that it's something that's going to be decided on local office. So our lack of media coverage or like a newspaper in East Palo Alto is huge. What I did get a response on is a lot of social media. Like I did an Instagram post that was targeted for East Palo Alto. It had over 400 reactions, like likes, comments, whatever. That seemed to work. People are definitely on social media and in in the neighborhood, speaking Spanish in East Palo Alto, going door to door, even if they weren't voters. I mean, I'm fluent in Spanish, and that was huge. Even if I was talking to someone, I mean, it was huge just in terms of understanding what the issues are that people are facing and getting people's perspective on things like housing, parking, all the other issues that we have in East Palo Alto. A lot of the issues with the forum, Maura's forum, the Nightmare on Boat Street, was actually pretty good. And it was kind of funny because none of the other candidates were really expecting it to be substantive. It was going to be more of like a trick or treat, but the questions were great. And they were, we had time to actually answer like 3 minutes, but when you have 9 candidates running for one, for city council, it's really hard to get into the details on things when you have 1 minute. And remember, there was one forum where you have 1 minute, tell us your opinion of the East Palo Alto Sanitary District, and then also how are you going to unite the community? And it was like, okay, that's like, how are you going to solve world peace and cure cancer type question, and do it in less than 60 seconds. One of the issues that I had running a campaign was that the PDI software was just a bear to use. I don't know if anybody's used it, but it's whether you're knocking on doors, to get out the vote or things like that. It's really cumbersome. I know it's very common. but I'm hoping next time that I'll have a better software to use. But then also like, sending out the text and things like that. But it was really about door knocking, to win. It was about talking to voters. And yeah, I made the joke, hey, we live in the most high-tech part of the world, but it was actually door knocking and meeting people in person and going to community meetings that you can make the impact. And it's very hard to, I was getting probably 10 texts a day by the end of at the end of the campaign. And I'm sure my texts that I sent out were zoned out. But yeah, to the point of, the YMCA on voting day, I went there to vote and I wasn't planning on tabling and talking to voters. And then I saw how many people were showing up. I was like, okay, I got to get out there. And so I got my table up and was talking to people several hundred feet away from the entrance to be within law. But I was really surprised by that. Actually, the people who voted on election day are only, it's a small percentage of the overall voters in East Palo Alto. But yeah, EPA people, a lot of them were dropping off ballots, but they don't have time. People are working 2 or 3 jobs, or just they have a family, they have full-time jobs. It's hard to take any time off, but it was very slow. I actually tried to vote in person. I was going to go there and work out, and then I saw that the line was like, it was probably going to be 45 minutes, and I was like, and there were also a lot of people, so I just went home, got my ballot, filled it out, and dropped it off. But it was very interesting. I've run before, but I've never gone door to door like I did this last time. And I'd say if you really want to learn a community, unless you're a postal worker, dropping mail off, knocking on doors and talking to people was incredibly educational for me. And it wasn't just for winning the campaign, but just understanding the community a lot better and seeing stuff. And because when you're talking about local issues, there's people talking and then there's the reality on the ground, and seeing the reality on the ground can put a lot of context into what people are saying. So I said at the end of it, win or lose, I was really happy that I had knocked on, I don't know, 1,000 or 2,000 doors and talked to hundreds of people, and it was really a great experience. The fact that it actually paid off in a victory was better, but yeah, I'd say if you're trying to reach youth in East Palo Alto, definitely having TikTok, Instagram, all of these things are going to help tremendously. And even if what I found is that a lot of people who, when I knock on their door, they had already seen the social media stuff, which was easy to do. It was a matter of putting a video together. But then when you talk to them in person, they knew who you are already, and either had an opinion positive that was 99% of the time, or negative, but they actually knew what the issue was. And so if you're not doing social media, you're probably missing out on a lot of people. And it's not to say you shouldn't be knocking on doors, but all of the above strategy for outreach is good. And then of course the banners, the mailings, I'm really not sure why, what the determining factors were, but I know that it was definitely, you saw all different approaches in terms of how do you reach voters and how do you run an issues-based campaign and educate people about stuff. But it was fun. It was interesting. I learned a lot, and by the time it was ending, it was like, hey, I actually know how to run a local campaign now. But then of course it's over, and you don't have anything to do with that knowledge. But it was good. So that was my experience.
Okay. Thanks, Mark. I mean, I think what based on what you're saying, what really it points out is the need for continued contact with voters. I mean, we've heard this time and time again. Don't just wait until an election is coming up to go out and talk to voters, because it sounds like there's a lot of just education and raising awareness of people in the neighborhoods, so that when you do go specifically about an election campaign, they already are somewhat aware of what's going on. So I think that's just a really good example of why we need to find a way to continuously interact with our communities.
Yeah, Thanks. The other thing I would say about like the forums is that most people who showed up at the forums, except for the YCS and Adamatangi forum, had already made up their mind. They knew who they were voting for, and they were just showing up to support their candidate. So you weren't really changing anybody's mind, and nobody actually watches the YouTube videos. So I enjoyed the forums because I like talking about the issues and hearing myself speak. But like every, aspiring politician, you have a little bit of narcissism in you.
Yep. Yeah.
But at the same time, what was great about the YCS forum is that there were a lot of people who they came for the trick or treat and they ended up getting, issues or maybe that wasn't the only reason. So I think doing events that don't allow for or that would bring in people that aren't necessarily that concerned about local issues, but they want to show up just to have a good time, and then also having a forum. I think that's what worked with Maura's event. It was really positive, and there was a lot of just a tremendous amount of people who you had a chance to talk to, and that they were not necessarily engaged on local issues previously, and were there, and they were understanding how these local issues will directly impact their lives in a way that maybe the Trump versus Biden election won't. So,
okay. So Mark, there's a couple of folks with their hands raised. I want to make sure that we have time. So Pam, or the folks at CZI, there's a hand up there.
Yeah, thank you. I think one of the lessons learned our group was when we're doing the trial run for like door-to-door knocking. We're also not experts, like Mara was saying, like we were like learning on the go as well. Like we had a lot of resources, but there was also things that we tried to figure out what was best for our community. And one of the things that deterred, I think, people from really speaking to us is that they would answer the door, and if we were to ask them, have you voted? There's people that can't vote, and so that kind of deters them. So they say yes, and we'll shut the door because it's like personal information that they don't want to share. And so we approached it from a point of we're here with information, and all we want to do is just share and meet you where you're at. And so when we approached it that way, it was like we don't care if you personally can vote. Like that's not information that we're trying to get out of you. It just we want to make sure you and your family, your neighbors, and the community have this information. And so when we approached it that way, they were very open in sharing information with us. And also, if they couldn't vote, sometimes they would come out and even tell us, and we would just say like, well, we really appreciate if you could share this with folks, and they're like, oh, I come to a local church and I'll share it with them, or I'll share it with my family and friends. And we're really appreciative because it was one of those things where they might not be able to vote, but their children or family members can vote. And we see it as they are speaking for you as well when they vote. The power lies within all of us. And so just sharing that information and not having people feel like because they can't vote that their voice or opinion doesn't matter, because it does. Pam, if you want to add.
Really good point.
Yeah, I would like to add that our organization has kitchen table chats once a month, and we have always said a little bit of something about voting, not a big to do, but just something about the importance of voting and reminding people about that, and we'll continue to do that piece. And along the lines of the education, Mara doesn't know this, but Betsy Colby and I are going to be working on a civic engagement program that talks about how everything works. And it won't be like it's a class, school class, but something that the residents can relate to, because we really believe that understanding the process is probably our biggest challenge. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Pam. Donna, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to share that for our outreach, we did a lot of phone banking. We did robocalls also. We had 2 candidate forums in East Palo Alto. And I think it was very successful. The problem that I worked at the voter poll at the University Circle. And a lot of people did not know that that was even a site to vote. As a matter of fact, when I went to actually start working there, I didn't see any visible signs. So I had to go all the way around University Circle site to find out where the place was. And it was frustrating because I wasn't feeling that good that morning and was going to bow out, but I said, no, I'm going to push through, but not to see signs where I would know where it is. And then when people came, they said the same thing. They didn't see the signs. They weren't in visible places. And then towards the end of the evening, when people were getting off work, then we had more of a rush, but we had a continual flow of people dropping ballots off and some wanting to, do it from the machines. And we only had 4 machines, and that was a problem too. Um, the thing is, when people somehow called at the city hall and said, send people over to University Circle, we were inundated with so many people coming from the other locations to that yeah, we were there till well after 11 o'clock. And the other thing I would say is there are seniors who want to vote in person. I think we should make special accommodations because they're standing out in the cold. I went out and kind of, talked to people, try to, keep their patience intact, and found seniors sitting on their chairs out in that cold, and I would bring them on in and, let them vote. I think we need to be very, very conscious of that. Some will want to do that. But overall, I think everything went well. Um, and thank you for all of the training that, and resources that you've given us, because this was an unusual election. That's all I can say. But thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Donna. Well, I think we're coming to the end of the meeting. Any last questions or comments people want to make? Yahira, do you want to close out the meeting for today?
Sorry, quick question. Yeah, sorry, I was new to this meeting last time. Did you meet how often when will the next meeting be?
Great
Well, that's one
question.
of the things. Yeah.
Amazing question. So the next meeting will be coming up shortly in the new year. We have to finalize the date. Diana and I have to coordinate with the elections office, but we will let you know. We'll be sending out a follow-up email with all the resources presented in this conversation, and then some of the links that were presented in the chat. So we will let you know. We usually meet during elections, we meet monthly, and on off season we meet bi-monthly, just so that you're updated. But that may change depending on the need. And as you can see, there's always an opportunity to bring something to the agenda and discuss it. If anyone on this call ever has any announcements or would like to include anything in the agenda, or just highlight some of the work that you're doing on civic participation, we want to hear about it. Sounds good. Thank you, Maura. Thank you, Diane. And thank you, everyone here. Thank you to the elections office. Thank you, Will. I saw Jack earlier. Thank you, Jack, for being here. We really appreciate your presentation and the data you presented. And thanks to Jim. I don't see him anymore, but I appreciate all the work that his office has put together to make this run as smoothly as possible. Lastly, thank you, Diane, for all the support. You are just what these organizations need in terms of support. There's a lot of things that Diane does in the background that you all may not be aware of. She's a part of every group that you have all spoken about, like some of the LSPS group, some folks with the League of Women Voters. She's been involved with Kate and the youth folks. So Diane, a round of applause to all the work that you do and the amazing work that you do here at the VEOAC. I just want to say we've pushed through this general election, and all the work that you've done with Thrive behind the scenes for our toolkit has been more than helpful. So Diane, please know that we appreciate you so much, and we hope that everyone here, including Diane, gets some time to just rest and enjoy the holiday season with their loved ones. Thanks everyone for making time for this meeting. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. I will be away some weeks after this, but always free to contact me. I will get back to you as soon as possible, and I look forward to seeing you on the new year. Happy New
Okay,
Year.
everyone have a great holiday
Thank
season.
Thank
you.
See you next.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.